part of the schedules. I call Andrew Little.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Great pleasure to take a call on this very important part of the estimates. And, you know, it was frankly a bit rich when the various farming or former farming members opposite stood before the House under a different vote a short while ago to boast about the great achievements in the farming sector, the great wealth being generated in that sector for this great country of ours. But they didn't mention one thing about the role that the Minister of Labour played in ensuring that farm workers on the minimum wage now get paid less than the minimum wage for 1 week out of every fortnight on the 12 and 2 work roster. What a disgraceful action by the Minister of Labour. What a shameful thing by this government. They say they like the rural sector. They say they look after people in the rural sector and in the provinces. They don't give a damn about the hard-working people, who are out there early in the morning, doing the milking, doing the hard graft on the farms, putting up the fences, getting the tractor out, doing the feeding out in the bitter cold weather that we have at the moment. Those people, this government doesn't care a toss about. And they quite happily reduce their wages because they want to please the big, wealthy, rich farm owners. Well, it's shocking, Mr Chairman, it's shocking. And it is the farm labourers who are turning up to the offices of Labour MPs saying, what gives? What's going on? What possible law could there be that allows a minister, at the stroke of a pen, to take $100 a fortnight off hard-working farm labourers? What a shocking thing. Well, the truth is this. We might have a Minister of Labour, but we have an appallingly dysfunctional labour market at the moment. 46% of hard-working New Zealanders cannot get a pay rise in a single year alone. 49% of employers in a survey last week saying they will not give a pay rise to their staff this year. And yet, members opposite, they sit in the chair, they stand opposite, and they crow about the great economic growth. It was 3.2% a year about 3 months ago. Now they're up to 3.8%. Who knows how big it will be in a couple of months' time when they're on the hustings. But here's the catch, you see. A great growing economy. Some people are doing well. Some people are doing extraordinarily well. But 46% of hard-working New Zealanders cannot get a pay rise. And the Minister doesn't care. The Minister doesn't care. He's the Minister of Labour, one of whose prime responsibilities is to make sure that we have a wage-setting system, that people are fairly rewarded. That's what you expect in a properly functioning labour market. But we have a minister who does not care that half the workforce cannot get a decent pay rise, that half of employers are saying they are not going to pay any more. And so we are in a pretty diabolical situation. We know that the income gap is getting worse. We know that inequality is getting worse in this country. We now have the lowest level of home ownership since 1951. 1951, because people cannot afford houses. And housing affordability is not just an issue about house pricing, it is about wages and incomes. And wages and incomes in this country have been getting worse and worse for a larger and larger number of people. And it is getting worse. We have a Labour inspectorate under this minister and with this budget that is stretched to breaking point, trying to keep up with the breaches and the non-compliance amongst employers in this country. They tried to do a blitz on farms. It was a random blitz on various farms. And you know what they found? 93% non-compliance with basic minimum statutory standards of employment. 93%. No, and then, of course, you know, we have a minister who bends over backwards to encourage farming employers to pay $100 a fortnight less than they would otherwise have to pay. No wonder the farmers think they've got carte blanche to not comply with the basic minimum standards of our employment law. That's the culture of employment standards in this country today. A government that cuddles up to, that licks up and down farmers who want nothing more than to pay their farm labourers less, and they wonder why they get 93% non-compliance amongst the farming community. Everything this government has done when it comes to employment and labour market regulation is to make it harder and make it worse for working people to get ahead and to get it, Mr Chairman,
Andrew Little.
to get a decent pay rise. Every law in the last 6 years that this government has promoted and passed has made it harder for working people to get ahead and to get a pay rise. Starting with the silly 90-day law, where 1/3 of employers have signed up to it, 2/3 can't be bothered with it because they know it's bad law, they know it's bad practice, they know it's dumb, and there is no employer who can point to the fact, as this government claims, that they have created a job as a result of it. Not a one. Not a one. Because law changes like that don't create jobs. All they do is make life harder. And there are good, responsible, sensible employers saying, listen, of course, we want to be able to take people on a trial basis, but we know that to do that responsibly, we should do that under the probationary law that is still on our statute books, because we know that that law requires the employer, a responsible, fair, sensible employer, to provide feedback, to treat the worker as if they are actually a human being, to treat them with respect, unlike the 90-day law that doesn't. And when the government surveyed workers who had been employed under the 90-day law, they could not find a single one who said that they got any feedback at all on their so-called trial period, because what was blatantly obvious is that those workers weren't being tried in the job, they weren't being trialled, they were just being manipulated and exploited and kicked out the door as soon as the employer decided they no longer wanted them or needed them. That's the standard that employment law has come to in this country. And a minister who bends over backwards to make it easy for employers to rip off their workers, and a minister who does not care, frankly, about basic employment standards. A minister who does not care about freedom of association. A minister who does not care about freedom of choice that workers are meant to have, according to the international agreements we've signed up to belong to or form a trade union. This minister and this government does not care. And so that is why things are getting worse for workers in this country. And that is why they are looking around saying, how on earth is it that this government could get here and be allowed to mistreat so many workers for so long? And it's time to bring that to an end. I want to turn briefly to health and safety, because that's very important to this country, as we all know. We've always learned a terrible and tragic lesson with Pike River. And this government has taken on the task to reform and revamp our health and safety laws. It is a pity, however, that in the spirit of this government of bending over backwards to help employers, it could not bring itself to make WorkSafe a tripartite organisation, as it is meant to be modelled on the one in the organisation in the UK that is truly tripartite. This government couldn't bring itself to do that. It was just one step too far. And so when we look at WorkSafe New Zealand, we know that it needs to be properly supported. It will need more inspectors if it is to do its job properly. And it will need to work pretty hard to get employers on board to deal with worker participation, making sure that workers have a proper and fulsome say on health and safety issues in the workplace, because that's the only way they're going to be able to get safe. Working collaboratively and cooperatively and sensibly with their employers, even though some employers are resistant to it, even so some employers don't want workers to have a real say on workplace health and safety. We know that the only way to reduce the atrocious record that is built up in this country is to make sure that workers can have a say with impunity, without fear, and have a real say on how health and safety is managed in their workplace and in their environments. That's absolutely essential. And if there is any shortcoming in that regard, then we will have to fix that up. The short answer is this, Mr Chairman, when it comes to the labour market regulation and the institutions responsible for overseeing them, is that we can do better. We can do better. Unfortunately, or at least perhaps fortunately, I don't know, but it won't be with this government. It won't be with this government if we want to improve our performance, lift wages for all New Zealanders, make sure that all people get treated fairly and properly at work, that they can have a good constructive relationship with their employer based on true collaboration and cooperation, a genuine mutual respect, so that their choices and the way they choose to bargain and negotiate with their employer is to be respected by that employer. That's what the legal framework must deliver, so that we have a good, fair system that fairly rewards and fairly treats people. New Zealanders expect nothing less, neither do we, and that is why we on this side of the House, we will be delivering that, and New Zealanders have been waiting 6 years for it.
Chair.
The Honourable Simon Bridges.
Mr Chair, what a speech of petty point scoring from the opposition member. Absolutely missing the big picture.